And we are live. Awesome. Hello, welcome everyone. This is Monday. No, Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month. And we are here to talk about Women Think and Grow Rich, talking about Think and Grow Rich and how it applies to women. In specific, very specifically today, we're going to talk about persistence, the chapter on persistence. Who am I? Why do you care to know? My name is Dawn Nocera, and I have been teaching from this book, Think and Grow Rich, for a long time. I think my daughter's 10 now, so for the last 10 years. And I'm very excited. Each month we do this the first Wednesday morning of every month. Gives you a whole month to integrate the new learning. And if you are interested in getting all of the chapters and all of the lessons come to your email once a week, then I will the link for that will be right below the video too. So, and I am excited that you're here. So this month we're talking about persistence, and this is probably one of my favorite chapters to facilitate, to coach, to engage conversations on, because there's so much that Napoleon Hill wrote into this chapter. We're talking about persistence. The chapter is titled Persistence, the sustained effort. I want you to hear this. The sustained effort necessary to induce faith. And we're talking about persistence, which is just a willingness to keep going. And that's the only effort needed. It's not a push. It's not a forcing yourself to do something. Remember, you learned last month, we talked about the power of decision, and that there are hard decisions that come with amazing forces of opposition. Sometimes the decisions that we make, if we want to practice making decisions in a very feminine way, it's about choice. It's about being in this space of choice and choosing which direction you're going instead of forcing yourself to do something or forcing the direction. And what happens when you're in that space of choosing, as Andrea, who's here today, mentioned, it creates this resistance-free zone, and this is so true, and I love that analogy of choice creating the resistance-free zone. So I'm going to put the link for you to watch from to join from the inside. I hope that you will join us. And if you're watching, but this month we're talking about persistence. And Andrea, I know that you said you caught up, you read this chapter before you joined in today, and I'd love to hear what your, kind of your initial thoughts before we jump in after reading it, rereading it. And I know you've read it before because you've been doing this with me for a year now, for over a year. So what are the new insights, or just what are those basic things that you got out of it this time? Oops, you know what? Let me.
17 years ago.
What? No. Repeat again. I had you turn down a little.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, so the first time I read this book was over 17 years ago. And very different person 17 years ago.
Yeah,
and even throughout the 17 years, I have reread this book. And you're right, doing the Women's Think and Grow Rich thing, again, I'm rereading it. So again, I'm rereading the chapter on persistence. And this time, it was like a Christmas tree in my head. Because all the lights just kept going off. And it made that much more sense to me. Okay, so I'm going to sound a little illiterate because there is a word that he uses here that I really don't know how to pronounce properly. But when he's giving the description of from the nightmare, coming out of a nightmare.
I know.
I don't know how to pronounce that word. In Eteria or something. I don't know. Anyways. So I had to look up the word, right? Because if I can't pronounce something and it's not making sense, I need to go find that definition so I can at least connect to the word. And it was like, You know, sometimes you'll hear people say, you know, they were almost had a near-death experience and their life flashed before their eyes. Well, I didn't have a near-death experience, thank God, but it was. The years had kind of flashed before my eyes, and I could see how where my persistence now and the momentum is at a very different pace for me. Yes, I've always been a persistent person. People have always kind of, you know, that's been a compliment I've always received, or I have tenacity, which I guess is similar to persistence, right?
Right.
Um, but now it's like, now I'm at that momentum, Dawn, because it is, and when he describes it, when you carefully seek out the mastermind, there will be one person in there that will aid you on this. And
Good.
this is what mastermind has done for me. So, you know, last night was a little bit teary-eyed with joy, tears of joy, because this is truly what this mastermind has brought to me, where my resistance is lessening, my joy has been increasing tenfold, my persistence no longer feels where it used to leave me feeling very kind of overwhelmed and exhausted,
Mm.
just life and the things that I needed to be persistent on. No, it's the momentum. It just is so so light, but so fast. It's hard for me to describe even, but it's the most incredible experience. And I really want to say thank you to you and to the other women in our mastermind, but thank you to you, Dawn, because you've created this space for us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and you know, you touched on so many different little pieces of it. You know, I remember, and I don't remember, you know, I have read this book, I mean, at least because I teach, you know, I teach from it. Every time I teach it, I read it before I teach it. I don't rely on my memory because I know every time I'm listening to it, I discover something else. But there is something very strange that I don't even remember reading about that dream part. And it's like, how could I read this chapter probably 100 times and never, you know, it never really clicked as that was the important piece. You know, but for this time, and you got it right on the nose, I think that there's a piece of that that's really important. And my son was listening because we were listening to it in the car last night, and he's like, what is he talking about? And I'm like, you know what? I don't even know, like, if, you know, at some point in time you realize that this dream state is happening, you know, like you're in a nightmare and you're waking up. But he was talking about like a real experience that you have in being asleep and wake and forcing yourself to be awake within your, you know, within your sleep state because there's, you know, whatever's happening in your dream world that is creating, you know, fear. And we've got this ability already in us. I mean, I thought this was just like a great example of how, you know, we have an innate ability to not self-rescue maybe, but self-perpetuate our, you know, into greater and higher places. And when we don't look at like those little tiny insignificant things like, you know, waking up from from a nightmare, you know, we have that ability. Our subconscious mind is deep inside of us. I believe is a divine seed. It's like that higher self that's just waiting to be birthed, to be acknowledged, and to just, you know, be activated, turned on. And when we give ourselves permission to kind of, and especially for women, if we give ourselves permission to not have it be about force, this is so important for women. And I'm going to say this about a million times because, and we're going to make some word adjustments within this chapter on persistence because he talks about willpower and he talks about it being a force. And what's so super true for women is when we release the idea, hi Elaine, when we release the idea that we have to push against the world in order for the world to like give us what we want, and we just begin to receive everything that's already here for us. That's for that easy and effortless. I'm in that flow. The momentum's going because you're not pushing up against the world anymore. You're like floating down, but there's a momentum. And it doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It means you're doing things in a consistent way that is creating maybe even rituals, like showing up every Monday for the Empire Building Hangout is a weekly thing you can do. Showing up every month for the Women Think and Grow Rich thing is a monthly thing that we do for ourselves. These are rituals, and he talks about this in this chapter as well. It's like creating the habit and the discipline. I mean, we think about these things as they have to be these hard things. I have to be disciplined, I have to force myself to do something. When you relax all that tension about the force, and you come from that place of choice, what we talked about last month with the decision, and you come from a place that you're choosing which activities you're going to be persistent with, it is so much easier. Gosh, life just opens up so much for us, and that's what you were talking about. I think you were talking about that momentum.
Exactly.
Way.
That's exactly what I was talking about, Dawn, is how has this momentum shifted for me is in opening myself up more, is in those creating those rituals and those habits. I have, created a new routine for myself. See, before I was buying into somebody else's belief system. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, it's a mass consciousness of belief in our society, but I was buying into it, and I was going against what my own innate guidance was, how and why and what it was wanting to do and align with me, and for me to align with it. So through this process of these rituals and of saying, hey, you're just you're just an old thought, so you're just like some bad habit.
Yeah.
And and I've been doing that with a number of my thoughts regarding my whole conscious state of wealth, because that was another thing that I was definitely in, the poverty consciousness, that fear and that being scared as being this single mother, and just, and hearing other people's shit in my head that was there for a lot of, really, my whole life. So it definitely has been a process, but I was just like, wow, when I was rereading this yesterday, it was like, yeah.
And there's kind of, and Elaine, I want you to pop in here, but I want to say something really quick before I get you to unmute and put your 2 cents in here. But you notice the difference in you, Andrea, and it happens I find that reading this book over and over and over again gives us a great perspective of where we are. And this is one of the things I love about the practice, the ritual, the habit of reading Think and Grow Rich over and over and over again, because at some point you read the chapter on persistence and you're like, I'm there. I am persistent, and I feel that I'm persistent not necessarily the right ways, but in the ways that are moving me forward, not the ways that somebody else, like you just said, not in the ways somebody else thinks are going to move me forward. There's a real natural path to our greatest unfoldment. It is so natural. It's just as you look outside and you see that big oak tree just naturally become the greatest oak tree in, like the big forest, or the out there in the field all by itself. Gigantic oak tree holding its ground amongst, lots of other trees, or maybe none at all. This is a natural pattern for us too. I find that nature always shows us like that, the truth. And the truth is that there is a natural way for us to grow to that type of magnificence. What happens is when we think we need to be, like if you're an oak tree and you want to be a palm tree, and that's what we're doing. We're like learning from other palm trees when we're the oak tree, or we're taking advice from the lumberjack. Like, you got to be kidding me. So just tuning into our inner guidance and trusting that, that the right nourishment will come to you in the forms of, you know, other people to help you, but trusting in that state where you're following the things that draw your interest and draw your attention. So if you're attracted to something and not like excited, where there's a difference between excited, kind of like the salesy kind of, I'm a salesperson and I'm so excited to see you, if a car salesperson, and just that authentic, like I'm really interested in this person, what they have to say. There's something new about this. I feel that there's an energy behind this attraction that's drawing me closer to, a mentor or coaching program or, laughter yoga class or whatever it might be. So speaking of laughter yoga, I just did that just for Elaine. Hey, happy to hear. I don't know if you can pop in here, Elaine. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this chapter on persistence.
This has been a really interesting week where I'm experiencing great successes and movement in some things, and then, I'm becoming aware of the areas where I have remained persistently ignorant of taking action. But just in the last few minutes, to temper or balance the part of me that wants to be very self-critical. I wasn't persistent about this, or I didn't do that well enough. I stopped myself, and in looking at the successes of this week, which I'll talk about in a minute, I realized I was persistent in following the things that I found I was curious about, and I was persistent in forgiving myself when I thought by some external standard I hadn't been successful. Because for me, there really is there is a high spiritual truth that says, in any moment, if you truly look at your circumstances with divine eyes, you are abundant in this moment. And if you continue to allow yourself into that feeling will move you into the next moment and the next moment. And then once again, it's not like your sense of achievement is going to come, once again, 2 years into the future when you have 10 clients and you only have 2 right now. No, you can feel that now. And so that's the highest truth I have to keep coming back to as I look at the choices that I've made for myself this year. Okay, I left nursing. I spend time caring for my parents, and because of that, and because of the flexibility I have to give to you could call it my work schedule, because stuff often comes up with them, and I feel like I know them better, and in many ways am prepared to assist them, as a healing presence and a helpful presence. And so I've stopped beating myself up if my income hasn't looked great. Here on Hangouts, I know I'm building a platform, and I'm getting good response. In fact, Chef Dennis Litley invited me to be on his Friday show. That's huge. That's huge. So the value or the gifts that I have, they're being recognized. I don't know where it's all going, but I'm persisting in my belief that I'm a healing presence.
Yeah.
And that I am abundant in this moment. And, you know, I beat myself up all the time because I feel like I struggle with goals. I struggle with forming a definite picture of what I want it to look like. There's something about that I have trouble with, and maybe I should stop not having trouble with that.
Yeah, and I'm going to share something with you, Elaine. You just talked, you know, man, you just brought some really good points up. There's something that has been shifting very dramatically over the past, I don't know, I think since 2008-ish. We'll just say this is what what it has felt like for me. And I think it's this emergence of this divine energy, you know, like that's really wanting us to wake up and say, look, I've got a plan for you, and you know, your plan is just mediocre compared to mine. And this is another point of view that you could look at. There are, first of all, I'm going to say that there are people already currently wired to be goal achievers. Okay, there's 1% of the population that is actually wired to achieve goals in the way that it's taught to the world. And it's taught to the world based on the 1%, which is awesome. But this is, again, trying for the oak tree trying to be like the palm tree, right? And, you know, what does the palm tree have? Coconuts, you know, like we are not coconuts. We're not coconut bearing, you know, trees. We are these, you know, great big oak trees. Whatever our tree is, whoever we are is unique to us. And there's a very natural goal achieving mechanism in us. And it is about, you know, it's about creating an image. It used to be, I taught goal achieving for years, okay? I have, I did it for years, and at one point I had to stop. I couldn't do it because I could see this pattern. It was so interesting. The people who knew how to achieve goals would achieve 80% more than the people who didn't. I mean, so they were actually, I mean, whatever the goal achieving classes that I was teaching were helping those top 1% do 80% better, which is awesome. You know, it's awesome for me, but what about the rest of the 99% there? They're being taught that they have to do things the way that top 1% does them in order to be successful. You have to find your own place where you can be the top 1%, which goes back to this desire thing. If it's very difficult for you to create that desire statement, what if your desire, and this has been mine, I'm being totally honest with you, for the last, we'll just say for the last 5 years, my burning desire is to be an instrument of the divine. That's it. That's my burning desire. Like, I don't want to do anything that feels that it's not that. You know, I want to go where, you know, the principles of success, that desire leads me. I don't want to go and say I'm forcing myself to be the thing that I have envisioned, because that thing that I have envisioned, if I were the person that I envisioned at 20, I would be a corporate mess. I would totally be torturing people. I would be I would be in that, you know, I'd probably have a heart attack by now, just say, like, but that wasn't what was in me. Something more was emerging, and allowing that emergence of self to come. That could just be the desire, the burning desire that you latch onto that makes you feel more expansive. For some people, desiring and having a burning desire for a very specific thing. Now, at the same time we're talking about Think and Grow Rich, right? I don't want to get these things confused. You can have a burning desire to allow Spirit to use you in the most expansive way, and have money be a part of that path. This is a spiritual truth. We tend to think that we have to have one or the other. You get to choose what's on your path. You get to choose what comes along with you. Okay, money, I'd like for you to join me on this journey. Oh, okay, now you're in a partnership with money, and a partnership with the divine, and a partnership with, this emerging, figuring out where your magic is. I mean, this is what you're doing, Elaine, right now. You're figuring out where your magic is. Once you get that, once you feel where you're most alive, without the noise of what you should be doing, you're going to, you're going to light up, and you're going to say, oh, I get it. And you begin to run a little bit, play a little bit faster, organize your, products and services around that magic that you bring to the world. This is one of the things that I'm, definitely finding for myself is like, I've got some really cool magic to bring. And it's, it's around a little idea, but, appreciate yourself. Gosh, for crying out loud, persistence. If you can be persistent in appreciating yourself, that's the lesson. That is the lesson. You don't have to do anything else. If when you're struggling and when you're having a hard time, like moving forward or not moving forward, if no matter what state of mind you're in, if you can create the habit, the persistent ritual and caretaking of yourself to say, I appreciate myself and I feel this, like this will drive you, not drive you in a pushing way. It will drive you to expansion. You won't even notice how much you're expanding until one day you wake up and you're like, oh, I am like a glorious tree. I'm not just an oak tree. I am a glorious, magnificent oak tree that, receives the light of God every day, that receives the water through its, I'm receiving everything that I need, and you will feel it. And you can feel it now, but in those moments of, beating yourself up, beat yourself up, meaning, like appreciate yourself up. Do it in a way that says, I'm not, hurting myself. I'm uplifting myself. How do I feel about who I am? And I had this conversation with my daughter just 2 days ago at breakfast time. She was having some kind of, I don't even remember what started the conversation, but I just asked her in it, who's feeling the feelings that you're feeling? She was like, what? Because she was trying to blame something on somebody else. I'm like, well, who's feeling anger? And she, she kind of like was, huh? And it finally came to her that she was the one who was feeling it. And she was like, you could just see the anger leave her, whatever the anger was about. It left her. And she says, oh, and she goes, I do appreciate myself. That was the whole point. Like, I appreciate me. Because she was trying to make it about how she is in the world. And she's, she's very much practicing self-appreciation. You can't be in my house and not do that. But this point of being persistent is, if you don't know what to be persistent is, if you don't know what your definite purpose is or your burning desire is, make self-appreciation the thing that you're persistent on. And everything else will fall into place. So, and find your goals, give yourself permission to follow your interests. And every time you think you should do something, and you hear that, oh, I should be doing this, just give that voice like a rest. You can evaluate it or ask it, but it's really full of BS, which is belief systems that don't really serve you. But when you can get into this state of mind, well, do I really want that? Do I really want to be closer to, this program, or do I really want to go and hang out with Chef, Bouvelet, I don't know, the chef, and you could go, yeah, or can you appreciate yourself for being a powerful attractor, to be the person who was chosen to be on that? So there's a lot of things to be appreciative of. And Elaine, you also pointed out like a really gigantic piece, and both of you did, Andrea and Elaine, that in our persistence, if we're not clear on where we're going, and this has been the old way of saying, if you're not clear where you're going, you're never going to get where you need to be. If you can just imagine that we're talking about think and grow rich, thinking and growing rich, R-I-C-H, not like, we're talking about money here. And this chapter specifically talks about abundance mindset as opposed to poverty mindset. If you can become persistent in giving yourself, or being willing to develop that abundance mindset while all of the stuff is going on. Just say, I appreciate myself, like you said, and I feel abundant now. Everything from that just blossoms. You make it so difficult, but it's easy. Elaine?
Something to say. Okay, so we're finding that we're talking about being persistent, which means if we're in self-appreciation, then turning off the critic, or we're having a conversation with the critic saying, you don't see the whole picture here, so shut up, or shut up your shoulds. and I found my words forgive and forget, but change them and add ing onto each of them. Forgiving and forgetting.
Yeah.
Okay? And you may have thought of this one before, but, when we think forgive and forget, we're often saying, well, I'll let myself off the hook, or I'll let another person off the hook, and I'm going to forget this thing, or pretend it didn't happen. And instead, when we think about living in abundance, then we get back into this state of daring to step into the place of saying, I'm already full. What wants to move through me that I want to extend and share? And that then as I am giving and I am extending, it just keeps me in the flow of giving and getting, because you can't give unless you're open to receiving.
That's true.
So the whole forgiving, it's then for giving, for being able to extend. And linking that with forgetting they're all woven together. So somehow those two ideas, releasing our self-judgment, opening the door to receive our abundance because it's always there for us, feel it, extend it in the form that it seems to be moving through you, and when the critic starts saying, you lost the keys to the door, you say, no, you either say, I have the keys. They're right here. God, I forgot they have been here all along.
Yeah.
I will open the door, and I'm going to be so powerful as to say, I'm not only going to open the door wide open, God has given me a divine screwdriver here, and I'm taking the hinges off the door.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we're getting into some awesome stuff, because this is great coaching points your imagination, and go back to the chapter on imagination, is so powerful. What you just did, giving yourself a visual of the door being open and the hinges being off, you can, that's like a trigger point. So you can always trigger yourself to remember that, oh my gosh, I have already done it. I personally have already created the image, you personally have already created the image that you took that divine screwdriver, undid the hinges of it, and the door is off, so you can move freely through whenever you want. And the door is always there to move through. This is like amazing. And this is when I was studying hypnotherapy a lot, and everything that I learned through that is about imagination. It really is about creating images. And you just did this amazing thing for yourself, Elaine, in opening the door and giving yourself this power. Like, So I commend you, and I sing. So that's awesome. Yeah, so, and being persistent, there's just so much, and he talks about the mastermind group, the mastermind in this chapter too. And the mastermind is the next chapter. I mean, that's next month. We're going to talk about the mastermind. He's been talking about the mastermind throughout this entire book. And if you haven't noticed that when you're reading this, you know, like by the time you get to the mastermind, you're like prepared for it, I guess. But what I have found when we're getting into reading it next, let's see, check the time here. When we're getting into reading the mastermind for next month, realize that you're going to come at it from a different perspective. And sometimes some people, and I'll give this a little, sometimes some people will read this and say, I have got to find me a mastermind group. And it has to be like the, the Andrew Carnegie, Ford, Edison mastermind group, which is really awesome. But when we're starting this whole process out, know that there is somebody already within your. This is the truth of growth. There's already somebody within your realm of influence right now who you can mastermind with. And for me, I started masterminding with my husband. Okay, great. It transformed everything for us. But both people have to be ready for that and know what you're, masterminding about. You can mastermind with, a sibling if you have, but somebody who gets and understands the mastermind concept, really understands that. And we'll talk about next month, we'll talk about the mastermind in details, but he's in this persistence. He's talking about being persistent also in your mastermind group and kind of relying on your mastermind group to help you be persistent. So you come on, Monday to the Empire Building Hangout where we're masterminding different concepts and we're sharing our wins and stuff. That's relying on that group if you're having struggles. And we don't do a kind of like a real mastermind group. We do, but we don't have time, and it's not the platform to go into like, private coaching, because within your mastermind group, you're going to reveal everything. You're going to let them know everything. If you're struggling, your mastermind, whoever you're masterminding with, it could be one person, it could be a big group. You are going to bring them whatever is happening right now, so that energy can move fast. So you don't have to sit with it, and that's one of the things that I think is very important. And even with a coaching group, you can do that same. If you have a group coaching program, if you're hosting one, if you are in one, bring what is in you, what is currently the struggle with you. And because you've got desires, you're going to have desires to do something different, something, and if we're still human, we still have, I'm not going to affirm that you have resistance, but it might show up. We'll just say that it might show up. And if you're in the space, if you remember to stay in the space of choice as opposed to hard, forceful decision, You're going to be good. You're going to be way better off than most people who read this book and feel like they're going to have to fight their way through life. This is so not the truth for women. We don't have to fight. And we don't even like to. I mean, some women do. I used to love to fight. It's not good. It's not good for my soul, so I don't do it anymore. But I've got enough of my own self-confidence to know how to be a good leader, to help, people move along their path. I'm never fighting with people. I just don't do it. Or fight with myself. I used to fight with myself a lot. And Elaine, it sounds like you kind of did that too. You're hearing those voices and you want to beat yourself up because you haven't gotten it yet. This is I think this is the biggest mind virus. There's so many mind viruses, but this is one of them that I think that keeps us from realizing our natural state of growth, what is called a natural state of growth or emergence or being activated to who we really are. And that is that, I should have gotten this by now. I've done all this work. I've been at this game for so long. I've gone to seminars for 20 years, and I should have this one figured out. When you stop and you drop that idea, because stuff happens. When you can drop the idea that you should have it figured out already, and just appreciate yourself for where you are right now. This moves this, and this is the transmutation of energy, and we'll talk about that in another chapter too. It's like the sex transmutation. You're moving this negative energy and you're transforming it into something positive, or you're moving this energy that wants to go and get, chase, pursue, get something for yourself, whatever that energy is, and you transmute it into that giving, and you open yourself to receive. That is divine.
When I was reading the chapter earlier this morning, and it was talking about, relying on others in a circle, and I may have even said this before in this group if we've looked at the word persistence before, but, right in the middle of persistence is SIS, and it's kind of for our sisters,
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Call on your sisters to help you persist when aligning with your truth, feeling your holiness, sharing your light, living your joy, opening your heart, joining with others in compassion when the hurt is happening, because the hurt happens. It does. It's interesting. The topic for the show that I'm going to be on Friday, there's 4 guests, and 2 of them are in health and wellness stuff, and then I'm the wellness, in the way I do, and then Ammon Johns, who is a internet marketing consultant, pretty well known on the Plus. He's going to be on as well. But Chef Dennis is calling the show "Build Me Up, Buttercup," and it's a really interesting image. I woke up this morning remembering that earlier in the year, maybe it was sometime last year, I did a consultation. I had a consultation with a woman who develops flower essences, and they're really to align you with, moving through your challenges, growing, expanding. And one of the ones that I selected, or that came, was this one called Buttercup, which, interestingly enough, the whole element of it is, bringing in play. I thought, well, how appropriate is that?
Right.
But then when I was looking at the words to the song, because there was a song by the Temptations, "Oh, build me up, buttercup, baby, don't you let me down," and it's really about, you get built up and then you get let down, and so I'm thinking about all those elements of, if you want to call it the way we self-sabotage ourselves, the way we interrupt this activity of self-appreciation. We do it all the time. And instead of, in the midst of our challenging circumstances, it's like, okay, there's got to be a blessing here. What is it? Let me find it. Because I don't want to stay in this despair place too long. But anyway.
Yeah, good.
So I'm feeling like this conversation, in light of everything that's happening this week, is helpful. And then I also want to say about relationships. Today is my parents' anniversary. They will be married 72 years. 72 years!
Wow.
They're 95 and 96, but my husband and I are going over there for dinner. And so when I was reading about persistence, I also thought about just sticking with something and daring to find the goodness in it, even though you might look at your spouse and go, this is the one I picked. Because right now I'm having some challenges in my own arena, and yet, of course, there's a part of me that knows every part of him that I'm having trouble with. There's some part of that's in me that I ain't recognizing. It's coming up because I gotta look at that.
I think our relationships are the best mirror. I mean, when I started laughing at myself with my, really, really laughing at myself with my husband, because I used to get so frustrated with him. And yeah, and I had this understanding of how, everything in our environment is a reflection of what's inside of us, but I just refused to see that it was him, that he was the everything in and they are like our mirrors. They're so revealing of what's truly going on. So take a look at it, and take a look at it in a more joyful and playful way. Don't beat yourself up because, those guys, all they can do is bring us what we got. Bring us who, and they bring us our expectations of them as well. That was one of the things that changed for me with my husband, is changing my expectation, changing my view of who he was. That made the biggest difference for me. So I'm going to just leave you with that before I say hello to Rusty. Rusty popped in here. Hi, Rusty. So glad that you got in here.
Hello. I was just thinking while I'm not sure, was it Elaine, about how we experience.
Yeah, that's Elaine.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Success Anorexia is an article I read a while ago.
Oh, it's a good one to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Super. I'm writing that down, so maybe we'll find the link and put it on the event page. So have you read, Rusty, this chapter in Think and Grow Rich on persistence?
I confess I have not.
Well, good. You're in a good, so good. You don't have to read it now. Because you're going to get the best of it right here, and you won't have to wade through all the masculine. And he did a great job of trying to write this book, write the entire Think and Grow Rich for everybody, but it still comes from a very masculine point of view, where guys they enjoy the fight of life, and they feel their own power. We talked about this on the decision chapter. Men feel powerful when they're out there in the world pushing their forcing themselves to be seen, and women feel more powerful when we're choosing, and we're coming from a more internal place of receiving. And not every woman, I'm not speaking for every woman, but there's a place of power that is so in the now, that is creative. We'll just call it the creative power. Men kind of like that destructive power, we'll just say. We are more creative creatures. And when you're just a couple more things I wanted to mention before we get off of here with this chapter, because if people are still reading this and want to go through it again, I have like my notes. This is my original one. This is the actual chapters, like the book binding came off. I have so many, but all my notes are on this one. So the one thing that is really apparent when I was reading through this every single time, and even this time, is if we can take that idea. Talks about willpower so much in this chapter, and we're talking about we're not talking about willpower. I want you to think about willpower. I want you to think about two things, and I wrote about this in my book back there, the 7 Keys to Freedom. There's a whole chapter on the will, but when we talk about willpower, think of it in terms of one half, like equal ingredients, focus and willingness. Okay, so if you can think about persistence as focus and decide what you're going to be persistent on. We can be persistent in the yummiest, most expansive thing to be persistent on right now is self-appreciation. That's it. You know, appreciate yourself as you're moving forward and you're working things out and you're trying to, you know, find your magic. Be so self-appreciating. Be persistent with that and follow your interests. Be willing, this willingness, so half focus and half willing. If you're on this path of success, this success path, you're going to want things. You're going to want to create. We're creative creatures. We want to create programs. We want to create coaching groups. We want to create books. We want to create, you know, that's it. We create, right? We are artistic, creative beings. Be focused. Also, be willing to take action. And be willing to not get it right. Be willing to fail, because failure sometimes is the ultimate. I don't know. There's no such thing as failure, really, and you know, we talk about that. But you know, just be willing to give it a shot, regardless of the outcome. And when you follow that, like, am I willing to do this regardless of whether or not I win or not? Am I willing to put my energy and my focus and my attention on this creative idea, regardless what the outcome is? You will find that you will be more aligned with that, your divine, natural thing that the world wants from you. I hope that makes sense. As opposed to saying, oh, I want to make a lot of money and let me focus on this, and if it doesn't work, I'll be, you know, up the creek without a paddle. You know, that's not the place that you want to create from. You want to create from this place that says, I want to create this. I know that this is so amazing. I know that even if nobody, you know, buys it when it's first done, that the world will be a better place because it's this thing that I'm creating is in it. And from that place, that's really powerful. And then creation becomes, then the marketing is much easier because you know, like you're getting, you know, you're creating more of a desire. The desire to help people becomes stronger. And that desire to help people in a different way than you've ever seen it before will be like, oh, yes, I want to help people, and how can I get this in their hands? How can I do that? And you will find those ideas will come to you. Oh, go speak. Oh, make sure that I share. I do have something that I'm doing this weekend. It's that I'll share it with you guys. Maybe well, I'll share it with you now. If you are interested in learning more about art and how it activates DNA, which is your divine natural alignment, go to artivation.net and join me. I'm doing a webinar with 7 artists this weekend. But that's what I'm doing because I'm interested in it. I'm excited about it, and there's nothing to to buy to get in this group, just to learn and to be excited about art. So that's my little thing this weekend. That's my little thing right now. And it's all about self-appreciation. I'm telling you, this is like the key. I can't say it enough. Andrea, what do you have to say? It looks like
You're right, Dawn. It is about the self-appreciation, and it's about appreciation as a whole, which is, really what I've been implementing within my own life in this last year on a very conscious art, to really end my evening with appreciation and to start my morning while I'm still in my bed with the appreciation. Most easy rituals have created these shifts, little, medium, and huge shifts within me. Elaine, I could really very much relate to what you were saying earlier. Yeah, that's what I've really come to realize is what an awesome manifester I am, because I could see how, wow, I manifested all of this crap in my life, all of this chaos, all of this heartache and stress and all of it. I created it. I manifested it. So prove to me lots of things. Law of attraction really is there, and it works. And what signal I'm vibrating on is what I'm going to be matched with, and about momentum and all of these things. So I know what an awesome manifester I am now. There's no doubt in my mind. So now was the things in order to turn this all around, and turning it around started with appreciation. And not so much for me, it didn't start with the whole self-appreciation. It started with appreciation and then moving into the self-appreciation, because I'm only going to speak for myself, not for any other woman out there. I don't know how much self-appreciation was really stressed, or if it was viewed at as egotistical in a sense.
Yeah, and we're finding, because I have a very private group that is they're practicing self-appreciation, and we're finding that it actually, when you're doing it, the ego will want to stop you from, your ego actually wants to stop you from appreciating yourself, because it is so not safe. Meaning you're going to find your higher self when you start appreciating yourself. And in India they practice some of them, not everybody, but they practice this art of divine self-love. Like finding that divine within them, and they kind of go into this, that this is the place where you find really that love that is, we all think is coming from someplace else. It comes from within us. Whether you're a Christian or a Hindu or Buddhist, whatever you are, I guess they're all the same. But whatever it is, that's inside of you. Christ within, the hope of glory. Whatever you're looking for is inside of you. It doesn't come from outside of you, and you can't really. I don't know, from my experience, I didn't get that until I started doing this self-appreciation thing. I had glimpses of it. It didn't quite, I got it intellectually, but getting it is practicing self-appreciation and having somebody, you can even mastermind with somebody about it, because having somebody witness what you're appreciating about yourself is transformative. It's really transformative. So, any other thoughts before we leave on persistence? I know, like, we can. Here's the thing: when all else fails, just appreciate yourself and be persistent in that. Be persistent in creating an abundance mindset. It will come naturally. This abundance mindset will come naturally when you're really appreciating yourself. You're seeing, appreciating is seeing your own value. When you appreciate something, you see the value in it. You're not just grateful and happy that you have it. This is gratitude is, hey, I'm happy that I have this thing. Appreciation is, oh, I see the appreciation is I see the increasing value of this in my life. That's a totally different story. So can you see the difference between being grateful, hey, thanks for being in my life, or oh, I appreciate you. I see the increasing value of you being here. Whatever it is. A cup of coffee. Do I appreciate my cup of coffee? I'm thankful for it. I'm grateful for it. But do I have an increasing value of it? I don't know. We'll see. It changed my perspective like instantly. I couldn't talk about it anymore. All right. So, all right. We got a couple things over here from Rusty. Mariah Burton Nelson to help women compete in healthy ways. Oops, I just lost it. Is a book. Anyways, I'll post those books on the event page if you don't get to it, Rusty. Well, actually, if you could post those on the event page, that would be great. Because I'm having a hard time copying and pasting that. What are the final thoughts before we leave?
I'm staying in a state of appreciation and persistence because I am a conscious being. I'm conscious to being a conscious being. And this is where it's at for me. This is where it's at. So that's so whatever I need to do in order to support me in being in those states is the direction I shall move in. I'm not. Well, I will only speak of what I want. So what I want is to just to be completely present in an appreciative state of myself and of all of that is around me to be appreciative of.
Yeah. Good. Elaine, your final words?
Yeah, I wanted to play with the word persist or persistent and like make myself a guidance about persisting. And persistence was too long, so I just went with persist. Passionately empower and enjoy realizing simple, infinite sunshine of you, of me, today. Passionately empower and enjoy the realization, that's the R, of simple. It's simple. I mean, the sun is there. The simple, infinite sunshine of you, of me, today.
Nice. Nice. Rusty, do you have any final words, final thoughts?
That together we can accomplish great things.
Yeah. And that is so true. You know, hold your sisters up. You know, this is, and I don't even know. This is coming, and I may cry. I hope I don't. But we really have to support each other because, you know, we just do. We have to see the best in other women. And we have to be willing to look at other women that we may be jealous of, or, you know, the stuff that you used to do as a teenager. Those are habits, you know, jealousy. I can't even, you know, like jealousy, oh, she's got this and I can never have it, you know, like jealousy of people's businesses. I used to do that. It's just crazy. Don't do that to yourself, please. When you see somebody who's doing great things, uplift them. In your mind, immediately look at them and say, thank you to the universe. to, whatever is in that woman to make her who she is and stand out, even if you don't agree with what she's doing. Be grateful that there's women succeeding, and you'll find that it's so much easier for you because you're going to release a whole lot of resistance for your own success. So just uplift and support every single woman, and especially your mothers. Especially the mothers, no matter what you had going on with your mother, just appreciate that she brought you through that birth canal. You're here. That's my final thought is, appreciate, be persistent in uplifting and supporting your sisters.
Yeah.
So, yay! Well, we're done here, and come back next month, the first Wednesday at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. The same thing. Next month we're talking about the mastermind. This is my favorite because this chapter is the one that I have become quite the expert on. I'm helping people create mastermind groups, helping people understand what masterminding is and what it's not, and really, personally, I am a very huge advocate of masterminding because it has been the single thing that has helped me along the way. I'm growing when I'm in a mastermind group, and I always feel that it's a little tougher, a little harder when I'm not. So I'm just throwing that out there for you. Hopefully you're finding a mastermind type of environment for yourself where you can share your wins, your successes, and where you can ask people for help, because it's the environment that you want to create. And we're going to talk about that. Gosh, what's the next month? January, and we probably won't. I'll have to check the dates. Just look.
It's the 7th. It'll be the 7th.
Then great. It's a perfect day. The 7th is the perfect day for that. So I'll see you next month, everyone. And you can go to dawnnocera.com/TGR if you want to get sign up to get a download of the Think and Grow Rich book, and to get reminders for this webinar or this Hangout. So there you go. See you next time.